developers for Centerpoint made a pitch to us a decade ago and asked for our cooperation to accept them as good neighbors and give us their assurance after a lot of discussion that they would not route their heavy truck traffic up and down Airport Way. They would develop something called was Pine Road, bordering them north-south on the west boundary of their development. That would start at Rock Road and go through the Lake Road at some point. That was their commitment. Based on that, we pretty much as a community worked with them to see that Centerpoint got started. We understand the value to Manteca as a community. This is, I think, our third attempt to blunt subsequent efforts to move heavy trucks north and south on Airport Way. So that's the issue. We'll get into a lot more of it. Bill will be talking about history in a bit, but let me introduce a couple of folks who are not Webb residents. I want you to know that from the outset. I want you to understand why they're here. They're researchers. They've been working to help over the years on this project, and they've come along to help Robin Jones and the crew that put this team together. Mary Meninga. Mary, would you identify yourself back there, please? Oh, you got to stand up. I'm sorry. Mary's been fighting this. She used to live on Lathrop Way until she found it necessary to move because of what the city was threatening to do with the property there. And I won't go into that. She can address that on an individual basis if and as she wishes. But she's been fighting the city, and I've been fighting the city for literally 6 years on this thing. We have a gentleman here, Jonathan Pruitt. Jonathan, you'll see Jonathan behind a camera. And please understand what we have here is an audio and video recording of this evening. The focus is on those of us up front speaking and on the Q&A session later. But please understand, we do know that not everybody wants to be seen. That's why we literally earlier closed this panel so there wasn't a mirror reflecting the audience and getting you on the video. They didn't want to be on the video. And when we go through the Q&A, I'll be the guy with the mic. I'll be passing it around. As a result, if you do not want your voice recorded, we still want to hear your question. You tell me, I'll tell Jonathan, he will cut off the audio portion. You can't see you took the back of the head. And get the question asked, and then we'll go back onto audio so that the answer can be recorded, because this session is going to be available on YouTube for those residents and members that aren't able to be here this evening. It's an important issue. We want as much information to get out as far and wide as we possibly can. So, Mary and Jonathan, thanks for your efforts and thanks for coming here this evening to help us out. Ken, I'm going to walk a microphone back and I'm going to talk to Ken. Actually, I'm going to do it the other way around. Ken, why don't you come up here a second? Ken is going to be the person that's controlling and coordinating what will later become a request for help circulating petitions. Petitions will be presented ultimately to the City Council. We've done this before. I think Bill, you put 1,150-ish petition signatures in front of council. We actually got their attention. They still remember it. Nobody's ever put more signatures in front of them. We want to beat that this time. It's the same issue, but it's a bigger deal now. It's closer to being a problem for us. Ken, would you explain who you are, what you're going to do in a snapshot? We know some people might have to leave early. Then at the end of the session, Ken will have a more in-depth explanation for those that we're going to talk with at the end of the evening.
Thanks, Norm. Yeah, Ken Stenfeld. I've been a resident here for 5 years, 5+ years. And what we've organized as an ad hoc committee is a petition drive. And in the back, I know a lot of people are already familiar with what's been going on with this particular initiative. And I've already signed the petition back there, so we're already a head start. We've got 2 ways of collecting, or 3 ways of collecting petition signatures. One tonight, you can, if after or during, or even before now, you want to sign a petition. We've got petition forms back there that are going to be presented to the City Council on the 17th of August. The second is that we're looking for volunteers to canvass our community in different areas. And we've got 28 areas segmented throughout the community based upon where you live. And if you're so inclined to help us canvass and go door to door for those that we would seek their approval, we've got the sections back there outlined and clipboards for those areas. And we've got maps to show where you live, and then you can volunteer to help in that. The third is that on National Night Out, block captains, a lot of block captains have agreed to actually have petitions at those parties as well. So we'll be having petition forms at that point also on August 3rd. I'll be back in the rear tables. If you have any questions, I have a lot of my helpers back there, and we hope to get as much participation as we can to present to the council on the 17th. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. On that note, if you are in the room and if you are a block captain, please, would you let us know by raising your hand, because we are going to, quite frankly, solicit your participation. It's voluntary, obviously, but we're going to ask for your help here at the end of the evening. Ken will come back with a much more detailed explanation for the block captains and those that he's going to have to help out with petitions. As I said, some of you have seen this stuff before. It was a Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over again. It's sad. On that note, on a positive side, Bill Barnhart has been doing this for a decade. He's going to sit in here and do an historic perspective and presentation. After that, we're going to open this to Q&A. Your questions are vital, because you're going to think as a group of things that we haven't thought of that need to be addressed before we take this on down to the city again. They're only going to get one last shot at this. They virtually make up their mind that we're trying to put into that part. Bill Barnhart, for those that don't know Bill, a resident here for a million years, and is very involved in our community.
Patty and I moved in late December of 2007, so we're going on almost 14 years. For me, at least, this, first of all, can everybody hear me back there? Okay, good. I've got my sound tech right here. Among the things that she's capable of doing, that's a little bit too much.
Patty will tell him when it's loud enough.
And I'll keep talking. Oh, that sounds pretty good to me, at least. Okay. So the way I look at what is going to be transpiring here is an end run by the city. End run trying to get around, the earlier promises that they were made. As Norm mentioned, there's quite a sense of deja vu. By show of hands, how many of you remember being here 2 years ago when we had a very similar thing, okay? Maybe 50% of it, okay? How many of those people remember coming in here 11 years ago when we had the same thing? Maybe a half dozen, okay? Now, I was not really trying to test your memory either on that. I want to go over the current situation as it sits today. Centerpoint and the city staff have negotiated amendment number 3 to the original development agreement for Centerpoint. And in that amendment number 3, Centerpoint's only required to use commercially reasonable efforts to complete intermodal way, which is that spine road that Norman talked about. And if they run into any kind of unavoidable delays, then they can continue to utilize that container yard, and they won't have any further obligation to complete intermodal way down to it. Just real quickly, there's a couple things holding it up specifically. One is there's a portion of Union Pacific land that juts out, and they would have to go across that. There's also a SSGID canal that needs to have a big concrete pipe put in it and a bridge put over it. And that involves SSGID and the Army Corps of Engineers to get approval for that. Also, the way I view this amendment is by the use of those terms, unavoidable delays and commercially reasonable effort, the new city attorney that we have is basically giving up all the leverage that the city currently has. Because if they meet those criteria, they get Centerpoint, then the city has no recourse to stop them at all. There's also a new project those of you who have driven along airport have seen just south of the laundry that they've been clearing the land there. That's for two smaller warehouses, one about 47,000 square foot, one about 54,000 square foot. We don't know who the tenants are that's going to be going in there. Centerpoint claims they don't know either. The completion of Intermodal Way would be serving those warehouses just in the same fashion that it would serve the container yard number 2. For those who don't know what container yard number 2 is all about, it's actually a parking lot for semi-trucks and the trailers with 468 parking spots, I believe. And the estimate is that those would turn over like 1.5 or 1.6 times per day. That yields 816 truck trips into there every day. What we want to do is strongly urge the council to not go forward with this project until Intermodal Way is done. So we'd like to, by stopping the amendment number 3 and telling the city also by this petition as well that we do not want them to issue a certificate of occupancy for those warehouses when they're complete. A little bit of history. 2010, Centerpoint came in here, made 2 presentations, and if you don't mind, I'll hold all the questions to the end. They came in and made 2 presentations. What the entire length of airport would look like from Roth Road down to Lakewood Way. It's actually divided into 3 sections. The north section, the middle section, and the south section. This is the north section here. It's supposed to be from the curve of the street on the west side of Airport Way, 219 feet to the building. There's a section here of landscape and parking lot that the city allowed them to remove. That's 72 feet of buffering that was removed, and the building was moved 72 feet closer than what was originally provided for in the Northwest Airport Way Master Plan. We fought that and we didn't win. This is a rendition of what the buildings in the middle section would be. They don't have that additional landscape buffering section and parking lot right there. So they're allowed to be quite a bit closer to the curb. And if you afterwards, if you want to come up and get a closer look, you're welcome to do that. This chart here shows examples of the landscaping along Spreckles, south of Yosemite Road, or Yosemite, to show us examples of what the landscaping on the west side of airport was supposed to look like. 6-foot-high berm with 6-foot-high hedge on top of it. And if you go back and look at this one, there's a line of sight from the northbound lane of airport. You were not supposed to be able to see the buildings whatsoever from the northbound lane of airport once after I think it's 3 to 5 years of growth of the plants. But that's not where we're at today. On December 12th of 2011, Centerpoint actually executed an agreement with Union Pacific. So it was approximately a year and a half after they came and made the presentation here. They executed an agreement with Union Pacific to allow them to put the spine road across this piece of property here that the Union Pacific jutted down. Keep that in mind. That was 10 years ago. Ever since, every project that they've done, they've got 4 or 5 warehouse buildings there. They've got the container yard number 1. Every one of those projects, they promised that they're going to complete the Intermodal Way. And then in 2019, when the container yard number 2, container yard number 2 first came up, and we came around with 1,152 signatures. Part of the plan at that time was to actually put a signal in just on the south side of the laundry a traffic signal there. Can you imagine how many semi-trucks you might get between Daisywood and the south side of the laundry and the lights are red? So at that time, the commission approved removing the traffic signal, but it placed restricted hours of operation on the project. Centerpoint then appealed the project to the city council. And the city council then said, well, I tell you what, if you'll execute a memorandum of understanding and you'll guarantee that you will complete that intermodal way in 2 years, we'll go ahead and give you a permit to start construction. But issuance of the certificate of occupancy, meaning that it's completed and ready for use, we'll wait until that is done. Well, we're 2 years later. They haven't started on that extension of intermodal way. They are at least 50%, if not 75% done now with the container yard. There's no concrete pipe in the channel. They haven't worked with SSGID or the Army Corps of Engineers. So now we have this MOU. I'm sorry, we have amendment number 3. That is to supersede that MOU from 2 years ago. And it's basically saying the same thing. We'll give you 2 more years to complete the intermodal way, and all you have to do is use commercially reasonable effort. And if you have any unavoidable delays, if Centerpoint has any unavoidable delays, then the county cannot put any restrictions back on the project. To me, the city is giving away their remaining leverage that they have on this project. So, where are we at in summary? Intermodal way has never been completed. Amendment 3 gives them 2 more years, using, as I said, commercially reasonable efforts. Amendment number 3 also grants Centerpoint the right to keep intermodal way a private road. That MOU was going to eventually turn over rights to the road to the city, so that the city could control and say who can use it and that type of thing. Well, this amendment backs out of that and says, no, Centerpoint wants to retain all rights to say who can and cannot use intermodal way. And so I ask you, think about it. Where are these 816 daily truck trips going to originate? It's not like they're all going to happen. Good grief. They're not going to appear out of thin air, folks. They're got to come from somewhere. So I've got a better chart back there, but I can show you somewhat on this one. This is the Union Pacific tracks right here, where they have the intermodal equipment that takes the big containers off of the train and puts them on trucks, or vice versa. Well, they've run out of room. At the same time, back in 2010, Union Pacific got approval from the county. They're in the county, they're not in the city, to expand their yard, put 3 more tracks in here and go extend it down underneath the overpass, which they've never done. It's been 11 years and they haven't done it, but they've run out of room. So I believe what's going to happen is they're going to, all those containers, when they unload them off the train, they're going to hook them up, they're going to ring them around, and they're going to park them in this new container yard until they can get a contractor to come in with a truck and take off with it to Dallas or to Webb. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. It's not like 816 daily truck trips are going to be generated in some fashion that is not already happening, They just don't have room at UP for all those trucks to sit there, or the trailers waiting for someone to come and pick them up. Finally, what we're wanting to do is say that intermodal way needs to be completed before any certificate of occupancy is issued for either container yard number 2 or for the 2 warehouses that are being built on the laundry. With that, we'll go to Q&A.
Overall scheme of things, my question isn't that important, but to the previous person that stood up here, Mr. Stedfeld, I wondered how many volunteers you already have signed up.
We just started tonight, so,
Ah,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Bill, from an email that you shared with me, I got the idea that Amazon had contracted with Centerpoint to use that parking lot. Is that not true? And if not, where did I get that idea?
Amazon has 2 warehouses currently within Manteca City. One over on Louise, and then a much, much larger one here. It's the third or fourth large building as you come south of the airport. There's actually going to be another warehouse. It's going to be a much, much smaller warehouse. It will be called what's called a last mile. So all of the trucks, the delivery trucks, will be moved to that location. Currently, a lot of them are being stored in the container yard number 1. And so actually Centerpoint's going to lose a little money when that warehouse goes in, because all those trucks will be parking at the new Amazon warehouse. And that one, by the way, is being built by local builders, local developers, not by Centerpoint or anything.
But that's not permanent. But Amazon's use of it is not permanent. Let me tell you why I care. Because, my issue in the last round was diesel exhaust. And if it were true that Amazon had contracted to use that parking lot, I think Amazon will be shifting over to either electric or hydrogen cell vehicles in the near future, which doesn't reduce the number of trucks, but it certainly does help the diesel exhaust question. That's why I talked.
Talk about something. We keep talking about the term intermodal. Simply means something that can be moved by various means, various modes of transportation. These are not just the vans that you load and it's got a piece of power, an engine attached to it as permanent brake. These are containers that can be loaded at any place in the world, picked up, put on a ship, moved to anywhere else in the world, taken off, put on a truck, put on a train. They can be moved by various modes of transportation without ever having to unload the cargo. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about intermodal. Are you wired? You don't want to use this one. So, yes, most of those Amazon trucks are going to move to that new Amazon. It's going to be a very small warehouse compared to all the rest of them, but it's going to have parking spaces for all of the Amazon delivery trucks. But that isn't actually part of what we're talking about here this evening.
So that's not container yard number 2?
No, Amazon will not be using that.
Excuse me, folks, I'm calling.
Okay, are they still going to put the stoplight in on AC1 to where they can? Yeah, and also, as I talked to you earlier, are they going to extend Lakefront Road? Widen it?
Oh man, what was your first question? What's your? Oh, the city council 2 years ago removed the requirement for that traffic signal on the south side of the Lottery. So that went away 2 years ago. As far as widening Lathrop, keeping my fingers crossed that whoever the developer is of that apartment complex is going to be required to widen it all the way from the church down to the McDonald's. But we'll have to wait and see. I have not read up on what the conditions of approval are on that project.
Are there any legal constraints we can bring to bear to avoid all of the problems I see cropping up with the stoplight, with the intermodal way. Is there any interference now from Union Pacific or the right-of-way to the road? That's a whole series of things.
Well, as far as the initial part of your question, it's within the city's power to approve industrial projects in areas that are zoned industrial, light industrial, which is that entire length of airport with the exception of the northwest corner at Lathrop. That's the area where that Albert Grove is, that's zoned as commercial. But everything north of that, all the way throughout, is zoned light industrial. And as long as the environmental impact report, which was approved 10 years ago, said that the impacts would be mitigated, not much legal action that we can do at this stage of the game. It's more humanistic, what can we get the council to do.
Just who is Center Point? Are they an international consortium or?
They are, I believe they are international, I know they're definitely national.
You're gonna have to hang on, Bill.
I don't know if Center Point is international, but I do know that they are national. In the Midwest, they have several very similar industrial areas, warehouse areas like they do here. They also, for those who are not aware, they have a majority interest in CalPERS, a retirement system for public employees here in California.
I really don't have a question, though. I have a concern that I can foresee all of these trucks wanting to leave in the morning or as soon as they can and everything. And I can just see all the traffic from trucks backed up from the stoplight at Lathrop Road, all the way up to, almost to Roth, with all the trucks that have to go through there. At that point, people in their cars traveling south, are going to try to get around those trucks. And the way they're going to do it is they're going to cut through on Daisywood. And Daisywood's going to become a raceway.
About the only response I can come up with is that's just even gives a stronger reason to require them to complete intermodal way, so that the truck traffic will be forced to go north onto Roth Road, and logically they're going to go west to Highway 5, or they're going to go up to French Camp and get on to 99, hopefully.
We've had trucks rerouted through our community because there's a roadblock ahead and their map system says, hey, you can avoid this by turning down Daisywood, and they get lost in here. Something else I want to pass along, by the way, we're talking about the rail system and the fact that they are now virtually maxed out. When they were here years ago and asked for our support to expand, they wanted to expand from their current capacity of 250,000 containers per year to 750,000. That is the route that they're on. This is something we don't have a lot of control over. That's been approved by the Railroad Administration. Most of us, quite honestly, aren't going to see that. I know I won't. They're talking a 20, 30-year expansion. But as quickly as they start to expand their rail system, that's what they really need to be looking at. Okay? So this is all a set of documents.
We've talked a little bit about Lathrop Road, but my concern is what are they going to do about Airport Road? They've only got one lane in part of it, and it's a mess. And if they start coming down that road, it's going to be even worse, and it needs to be fixed.
The answer to that question is actually not part of this presentation, but I do have an answer. I attended the city council meeting last week, and there was a presentation made about what they're going to do from just north of Daisywood all the way through to Daniels. There's going to be a hodgepodge of different repairs being done. They've gone through and they've gone through and designated certain portions as need only minor repairs, some that need major repairs, and some that have medium repairs. And so it's going to be kind of a hopscotch kind of thing. One side of the road might have minor, and then the other side, the northbound lanes, might require major work, which means digging it up 18 inches down and replacing it. But they've got $4 million set aside for it. So it's not going to break the bank, but they estimate more in the line of $30 million to fix it with a permanent fix. So that's the most current information I have on that project.
The reason I keep running this mic back and forth is so by the time I pick it up, he can formulate an answer before I can back.
So, obviously, what about an environmental justice complaint against the city of Manteca, which has reversed anything that they've ever done that is of advantage to us?
You see, everybody needs time to think about it.
Mary, you would know more about that than I would.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, I am related to
Good. For those not aware, there is, I don't know quite sure how recent the legislation has been, but it's been a couple, 3 years at least, relative to environmental justice is the generic term that's used, regarding noise, air quality, impacts on residential areas from industrial and so forth. And what Mary's referring to is a possible suit against perhaps the city or whatever in that vein. It would take some doing, but we're not at that stage right now.
Jonathan would like to answer that question. May he? He knows what he's talking about.
Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Pruitt. I'm the Environmental Justice Officer. I don't want to hear your guys' next.
Jonathan, if I may, please explain your full connection to the background of the folks so they know where your answer is coming from.
Sure, my name is Jonathan Pruitt. I am the Environmental Justice Program Coordinator at Catholic Charities, Diocese of Stockton. I've been part of this work for the past 2.5 years, and I'm telling you, Manteca does not understand what it means to protect public health of people. They worry about economic development, but don't understand the community health. There are ways we can combine the two, but they don't want to do that. So for me, I've been involved in this work for a while. I've worked with the Attorney General's office. We've been looking into this project. The only problem is that the Attorney General's office and any other sort of projects, they will look into it, but they cannot do a case until it gets passed. That's always the case. That's always the problem with these, when it comes to litigation. One of the things I know for sure is them being able to see a community like this. I mean, you guys are filled up. This is exactly what's going to build momentum from the Attorney General's office, knowing that you guys are upset about it. This is an environmental injustice, and the fact that you guys are even located next to industrial warehousing is a problem. And the fact that these environmental impact reports do not include, they say there's no environmental impacts. It's astonishing. One of the reasons why it's astonishing is because here's the thing. CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, which is what the EIRs have to go through, which is a very strenuous process. EIRs only look at not everything when it comes to impact on people's environment. One, they don't look at the destruction of the roads. How can you look at the destruction of the roads? How can you analyze destruction of roads? You can't really. The thing is, they don't look at that, and so they allow these projects being piecemealed and allow them to get passed. Problem is, and that's another quote, another thing, we were talking about Amazon going into different types of trucks. Thing is, yeah, if you go into electric, if you go into hydrogen, they're still going to cause problems to the roads. They're still heavy. They can still do destruction on the roads. And as right now is what you see, and you'll see in the back, I was able to create a map for you guys. as of right now, if they allow this project to get passed without an extension of intermodal way, the city is allowing the projects, allowing the trucks to go to Airport Way. Because where else can they go? There's no extension. Where are they gonna go for the time being? Truckers are already doing it. What's to say they're not gonna, why would they follow intermodal way after it's developed and just continue doing it? And that's the other aspect to this petition too that needs to be voiced is, not only is it talking about the demand from the city and planning commission to extend intermodal way, but it's the demand to let them know they're not going to allow trucks onto Laker Road once those projects are developed, or Airport Way, once they're developed. Meaning, placing clearance bars. You've seen those clearance bars before? Those clearance bars in the entryway of this project right here, there's a huge, that's what Bill was talking about, a huge driveway. It's fit, and what is it, 75 feet? It's a big driveway. Clearly you can see there's some problems with doing that. Any little car can easily get into something that's 15 feet or so. But because it's 75 feet, they already are making it clear they want trucks there. What I'm proposing and what residents are proposing, I think you would want to propose, is that these trucks should not even be allowed on Airport Way, and putting a clearance bar and also barrier. Putting two things to not allow them to turn into. Keep them on intermodal way. That will then pressure them to say, and to make you sleep at night and understanding and knowing that those trucks will not be taking Airport Way because of those clearance bars, and that intermodal way is the only way, is the only thing they can do. Okay? And that's it. I mean, but yeah, that's the only thing.
You've talked about the environment and the noise and everything. What about our property value?
Good job.
There's been nothing official. Common sense tells me that at least as a minimum, the houses that back up to airport are going to be affected. Before Patty and I moved here, we lived in a gated community, and our home backed up to a major artery that was mostly vehicle traffic. It wasn't big trucks, but mostly vehicular traffic. And when we had the appraisal, the appraisal was up front. It reduced our appraisal value by $20,000 by being located where we were at. And that, again, was just regular vehicular traffic that didn't involve large trucks. So common sense says, yeah, it's going to have some impact. So that is, again, another reason to push for the completion of intermodal way. And as Jonathan talked about, some type of restrictive barriers so that the trucks can continue to come out that way.
You might have got the impression Jonathan had an interest in this.
I may not have heard you properly, but I think you started by saying that their lawyer rigged it in such a way that there's nothing the city can do. Did I hear that right?
I'm going to answer that one if I may. There's never nothing that can be said and done. If nothing is said and done, we're dead in the water. It's just that simple. Is there a guarantee that all of these efforts will carry the day? Of course not. After all, we've been doing this for a decade. But they seem to have the impression, this is just my impression now, they seem to have the impression of us that they'll just go away and get tired of this. Our memories may be failing, but they have not failed yet.
Just to clarify, Amazon has moved out of lot 1, totally. It's full of trucks. I mean, I've been over there several times driving that area.
Well, last week there was Amazon trucks in it, so.
They must be big trucks, because none of the little vans are there any longer. Like they were 6 months ago, it was almost all of them were little vans. Awesome. You just brought up a very good point.
I took photographs last week of them in there, so.
They're back.
Can we put up the barriers and entrances to Del Webb so the trucks can get in? I'm just wondering.
The next cop can answer that one. I would not want to be the one responsible for putting that barrier on. They may not enforce the truck traffic regulation, but they would enforce that one.
Real quick,
Several months ago, when we had the situation where there was a shooting on airport and the trucks were redirected into here, there was actually Sawhorse City Public Works Sawhorses out there directing traffic into Daisywood. And one of our residents went out there and moved them and pushed them over, and the city got really ticked about that.
I will say again, as an ex-cop, and I know there's at least two other ex-cops in the room, they can challenge me if they think I'm wrong. You don't want to be the person doing that. Well-intended or otherwise.
I don't know enough about the Manteca City Council and how it works, but is it possible for us to physically show up at a meeting there and have our presence and touch them on how important it is for them to act on this in a positive way for us?
As I walk this back up for Bill's answer, I've spoken 3 times at council, twice on this very issue over the decade.
Yes. There wouldn't be room for all of us. So this petition will serve a good purpose, but there is seating probably for, what, 50, 60 people in there, and the city has the practice, unlike our current board here, of allowing public to speak during their discussion about an agenda item. Okay?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
The answer is yes. When you first walk in the door, there's a little table to your left, and there's usually a little 3x5 card there. And you fill it out saying you want to speak during the public forum on agenda item C1 or whatever it might be on the agenda. And then when they open it to public discussion on that agenda item, you'll get 3 minutes.
So if it's not on the agenda, you can't bring it up?
They have a public forum at the beginning of the meeting where you can bring up anything that is not on the agenda.
Everyone got somebody got to be, so long as that. I'll be back. I'll be back. Hang on. I need to, so we talked to, actually I'm close friends with two of the council members, and I'm at odds with the mayor all the time. But yeah, we talked with the Pacific members, and I believe that we'll have at least two on our side. Gary Singh and Jose Nuno, because they were on our side 2 years ago when we went that time. Jose Nuno and Gary Singh. There's the new members on the board I'm not that familiar with yet.
I'm going to confess something. I've already asked Bill, who should I vote for? I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying who is responsive to the kinds of feelings we have. All the way up and down, airport, all the way up and down, cutting through this area. You cannot get on Lathrop Road coming from that beautiful Madison Grove. You can't go left after 1:30. Any day, there's just too many trucks on the road. And I helped a lot in the city of Pleasanton before we moved here. And what I did was I sat on a busy street and counted trucks. And that really annoyed a lot of people. And I really think that is something that we should have little jobs like that we're not going to go away.
That Mary Menendez back there has done that, and she's actually taken video and followed trucks all the way from Highway 5 to 99, and they never stopped anywhere. I got a grip better, I guess. Question in this area right here? Oh, yes.
So the city is kind of in disarray right now with the planning commission and everything like that. Okay. I try to be civil, Bill. Okay, so how does this affect what's going on here? I mean, is the city council in total control of everything?
Perhaps with the exception of the mayor, I think that other city council members are reasonable to the point where they are willing to listen to us. I believe, although this amendment got pushed forward from the planning commission, I attended that meeting and I was sure it was going to be turned down on a 4-1 vote, but that 2 members at the last moment decided to vote yes to push it up to the city council simply for political reasons. Let the city council handle, the political hot potato. But Jose Nuno, Gary Singh will definitely listen to us and make a judgment on what they feel is best for the city. And as I said, I don't have a feel for Dave yet that much, and Charlie, he's new. But I think he definitely, as a retired police chief, he definitely has strong feelings for the city. Mary, yeah.
All right, so for someone who had the question about wanting to do comments and going, I'm telling you guys, please show up, be there. What are they going to do? They're going to kick you out? They're going to kick you guys out? I mean, realistically, what are they going to do? Be there, try to fit it in, whatever it takes. If you want to understand, if you want to get an idea of what sort of public comments you want, I am willing to make you a template of what to say. I'm dead serious. I won't go to sleep till I get it for you guys, because this is important for you guys. And I understand hello. I understand that it's hard being able to do a public comment first time. But once you do it first time, it's a good feeling. I'm willing to provide you that template. In the back, where those petitions are, there's a blank piece of paper. I made it blank. There you go. Susan has it out there. I wrote it, name, email address. If you would like an email, or if you would like sort of a way to coordinate how to provide a public comment, I'm willing to send you a template. We can work together on it. That's how we can do it. And I'm not downing the idea of being right there. I'd be willing to work with you on putting chairs on chairs and scoping out videotaping. I mean, I already have it right here, so I'd be willing to do it if you want. But it's crazy, but yes, I'd be willing to do it. So please, I mean, I also have business cards too, so if you guys need help, I have business cards. Okay, thank you.
Good. We touched on it earlier, when you go in to council chamber, first table on the left inside the door, it has stacks of agenda copies. All you need to find out is what item this is on the agenda, the appropriate meeting, and then you pick up a little card, just like this. There'll also be a stack of those. And this is where you simply sign in. This is the agenda item number, what the subject is. You wish to make a public comment, your name, your address, your phone, and you give it to the council's administrative assistant before the meeting starts. When council gets to that agenda item, they turn the mic over to her in effect, and she will call one by one. I have 100 people here tonight, hopefully. Bill, we had a question back there. I know some people are going to have to leave a little early. They're wondering what's in the back snapshot so that they can understand what they might look at back there.
From Ken? Oh, those additional charts, right? We have some charts back there that show you the relationship of Centerpoint to Del Webb, and the one in the center back there shows the potential truck traffic from Union Pacific coming around the airport and going in container yard number 2. Also, trucks that they get filled up in the Centerpoint warehouses themselves. If they don't have a ready destination to go or driver or whatever, there's got to be some place for them to park until they get that. So they're just gonna come out of Center Point, go around Airport, go into container yard number 2 also. That's pretty much it as far as the charts go. And if there's any questions regarding any of them, you're welcome to ask when you're up and moving around. One more, Mary.
I think Norma's avoided me because I used the word lawsuit once and made him unhappy. I just wanted to make it clear to everyone, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a limit to the number of seats that are in the room, but that doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't come to the meeting, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't take a card and offer to give a comment, as many of you as possible. This is the time to remember John Lewis and the principle of good trouble.
When the seats are filled inside the chamber and people are standing outside, if a person outside has filled out a card, they will be called in so that they can speak. Okay, that's not an issue. Oh, in the back.
Hope he has his Dr. Scholl's.
The city council meeting is on, we'll be considering amendment number 3 is on August the 17th. The planning commission meeting, which will be considering the 2 little warehouses that will be going in just south of Laundry, that's on August the 19th.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate all the work you're doing. I spent 14 years negotiating with Union Pacific Railroad. I ran Caltrain on the peninsula, and we had to deal with them anytime we changed the configuration because they had track strikes that were perpetual. They are like wrestling with an alligator. They're very difficult to deal with. I'm wondering, while you continue to push the city to try to change the terms of Amendment 3, if there's something that we can do to create additional political pressure on the council. One of the things that we did at times with Union Pacific was to contact our county supervisors. We contacted our local elected state representative. We contacted our local congresswoman. And we asked them to put pressure through Union Pacific's government affairs group, because they have one. And everything that they negotiate comes out of Roosevelt. There's a group, and their job is to make as much money as they can off of public agencies and Centerpoint. That's what their job is, because they get paid to do that. I really think while we continue to push to get Amendment 3 changed, we have to get more pressure coming from higher up. We've got to get county supervisors, elected reps going after, because this idea of best efforts, Bill, best efforts, that term is nebulous. They're going to do exactly what you said. They're going to try to walk away from that. And the only way that we can get them to not walk away, if we lose the battle on Amendment 3, is to put this higher political pressure through their government affairs group and say, if that continues to happen, then you're going to have a big problem in this whole community.
So I'm Robin Jones, and I would be happy for, I don't know what we would call ourselves, a delegation to go and meet with our elected officials and state our case, and I nominate Chuck to help because you're very knowledgeable and you said some things I did not know. So I think if we have like a core group of us to go and speak on all of our collective behalf. So there's Josh Harder, there's Tom Patty. I think it's important we go to the planning commission meetings, because you learn a lot and the kind of the dance that the city council and planning commission do. If you can't attend the meetings, they're on channel 97 at 7 o'clock. You can witness, you can see the speakers. If you can't go to the meeting on August 17th and you want to participate, you can write a letter and it has to be read by the city clerk. You can submit it for a read. The city clerk will read up to 250 words and literally stop. Ask me how I know that. say happened to me. And then they say, well, we're gonna give you the letter to the council and they can finish it on their own. Oh, yeah, right. So, but you get 3 minutes to speak. Speak if you're there physically. If we show strength in numbers, I think that would be really important. Beginning tomorrow, there's gonna be petitions in the library with information sheets. We have to make more copies. I apologize. We didn't have enough, but there will be, please encourage your neighbors, people who live here, if they can't, if they can't go to the National Night Out, we're going to be working with block captains, so that was just perfect timing to have petitions there for signing. We also are going to ask people to walk our neighborhood. Mary's like the outside person because this is all of Manteca. This isn't just us, but literally it's across the street from us. So issues of quality of life, air quality, the road conditions, someone's going to get hurt. Someone is going to be hit by those trucks. It's just common sense. And yes, I do believe the value of our homes will be affected. So there's a lot at stake here. And anything that you can do, if you want to help make signs, Mary and I talked about standing on the corner with signs. Sitting there, I love that tally idea. That's really a good one. So there are many things that we can do to start applying pressure. But we're going to have to work together on this. This project never should have happened. Never. You don't put that kind of project next to a senior community or children. Children.
On the agenda, and if there's, like this particular amendment number 3 was like the third or fourth thing under the textual description of what they were going to be considering, and just click on it and it takes you out to the document, and you can look and see and read it and get an understanding of what really is going on.
Thank you, Bill. Just a quick question. I think earlier on you said that Center Point had an agreement with UP to go across the tracks, and that would extend it from all the way out. Is that agreement still in effect?
I believe it is. That agreement was executed on, I think I said December the 12th of 2011. It is actually referenced in this amendment number 3 to the city's and the Center Point's development agreement. So I would believe that because it was referenced in this amendment, that it's still alive and kicking. And why they've taken 11 years and not follow through on it is beyond me. There's no reasonable answer to that.
This may be a little too late to put in progress, but every politician hates negative press. And I think there's got to be some media coverage. I don't know how it can be done in this short time, but, I think Robin said it best, this never should have been done. This is a community of senior citizens. The environmental impact aspect of it, and these kind of tick all those boxes that people like to, get riled up about. And I think the media needs to cover this. It's a human interest story. It's a quality of life story. It's all these things. So I don't know. The meeting's only a few weeks away, but if there can be media coverage, of course they're voting that night, right? So you have to just put pressure on the writers.
We have until the 17th. Of August. And the committee considered actually having print media here tonight, and we decided it probably wasn't in the best interest of Del Webb to have the print media here tonight, but they will be let know about it. And John?
I'll make sure they know about this. I'm dead serious. I have them on my phone right now. I can get ABC, Fox 40, I can get all of them. I just need to make sure we have people that are willing to talk about this, that are vocal, because that gives them the views. The news needs views. They're going to get something. If people are loud, good trouble. They're willing to listen. But we need to make sure people are together, getting the footage that they need, and I can make sure they do it, because this is big. This should be known. Attorney General's office knows. I'll make sure they know.
I'd simply add that over the past 2 years, probably at least a dozen times, if not more, print media has referenced the 1,152 signature petition we did 2 years ago. You know, every time Dennis has an opportunity to interject that in an article, he does. So. And Dennis and I get along very, very well, too. Except he spells my name wrong.
I just want to encourage everyone that we need to be voiced out on that. We lived in Monterey County and the city, I had to go to the city council because they tried to take our arts program weekend away. We had jobs for youth there, we had musicians there, we had all kinds of festivities, and the city tried to take that from us. But we all showed up to the council meeting and we had something to say. And it really is important, even if you don't want to say anything, just put your part in, because it does make a difference. I mean, I told them, this is the first job my son had, was coming to Monterey, and he has blossomed. He had a rough time coming here, but we don't want you taking away the arts program for the weekend for everybody of the county of Monterey. And not only Monterey, people would come in from all over. So it really is important if we do voice our opinion and let them know that we're not taking it. We're going to fight back.
As Robin said, physical presence at the city council meeting on the 17th is great, but if you can't make it or you're uncomfortable being there, a letter of 250 words or less will be read into the record at that meeting by the city clerk. So, I mean, that's quite as good as your physical presence, but it's still at least 75% as good. Okay? Any more hands? We've only got 15 more minutes, but we don't have to fill it up. Yes. The question was, is it possible to get a copy of the amendment? The agenda for the August 17th is not available yet, but it was on the Planning Commission's agenda on the 15th. Yes. And so you can go onto the city's website, click on agendas, which is on the front, their main homepage, and it takes you out to a list of all the past agendas, and you can find it. Yes.
To make it easier, if you just want to put your email on the back of that thing, I'll make sure you get all of that. Just put your name right there where Robin's putting it in. Just put your name, put your email. I will make sure, probably not today, because I have a video to edit, but tomorrow. I'll make sure you guys all get it. It'll take time, but I'll make sure you guys get it. Please make sure, put your name, email.
I'd like everyone to have the experience of going out onto the city's website and on the home page clicking on that agenda icon and then seeing what comes up. Not only can you pull down the original agenda, but there's video of the meeting, whether it be a council meeting or a commission meeting. So, like within 24 hours or so after those meetings occur, a little icon pops up for that meeting that says video, and you can click on that, and you go out and actually watch it if you want after the fact.
So for no questions, I can't have a mic.
So I just want to fill you in a bit more. I did a summary up front.
what we're doing in the back, we have signature pages. If you want to sign a petition tonight, you can do so. We have another form back there, a sign-up sheet for the block captains. We'll be providing petitions to those block captains for the National Night Out on the 3rd. The third area is getting volunteers. As a committee, we weren't sure how many people were going to show up tonight. We knew it up to you, but this is overwhelming. This is really good. So what we've done is divided up the community into 28 zones. And what we're seeking is people to take a zone and go house to house, asking people to sign the petition. One signature per person. If they have 2 people in the household, 2 signatures, that's what we're seeking. If they have 3, I don't know how many residents have 3, but nonetheless, we want as many signatures within the community as we can get. And we need volunteers to walk and canvass the community. So far tonight, somebody asked how many volunteers we have. I checked, and out of the 28 zones, we already have 11 volunteers. So thank you very much for that already. For those volunteers, we have a clipboard for the zone. It includes the area that will be covered, we have some copies of the petition itself, the signature pages. There's some instructions on the yellow sheet, such as this, to tell you exactly my contact information if there's any questions. What we're trying to do, first off, is get as many signature pages submitted by the 12th of August in anticipation of the council meeting on the 17th. So we can bundle that into the formal packet that's going to be submitted to the council. That doesn't mean we're going to stop getting signatures on the 12th. We're going to get that up until the afternoon of the 17th. Okay. Let's see what else I have here. So we got, so for volunteers, we just need to know what address you're at, your name, address, phone number, so we can get in contact with you. I'll be the point of contact for collecting the petitions. Again, my contact information is provided. And I think that's really all I have. Any other questions out there about the petition process? Yes.
Yeah, last time when we went out and did the petitions, we had a map of the area affected. So as we talked to the homeowner, because a lot of them said that that's the first time they ever heard of it. So by being able to show them the map and where the trucks would go and how it would impact them was very helpful. And you could provide that for the.
Okay, I'll talk to Bill and we'll get some maps available to show homeowners what the effect is. And we have a starting point, but we'll put something together in a little more detail so you have that as a resource. Great idea. I want to make clear something regarding letters that you may send in. If you send a letter and the city clerk takes it and stops reading at 250 words, that's fine for the audio portion of the meeting. But that document and any supporting information you have attached will become part of the permanent record. So if you have more to say and more to offer, do so. It will all become part of the record of that meeting and will become part of the record of this process.
One last spot. Remember, in addition to being there in person, sending a public comment, because of COVID, they've made it also available for those to do it virtually. So you can actually call through Zoom webinar and talk. If you guys ever use Zoom, everyone's used Zoom, right? Similar like Zoom, you can actually call the number, and if the number that you call picked up from the speakers, and the people there on the floor will be able to hear you. So if you feel like, fortunately I don't have a car, I can't get there, you can do it that way too. So there are 3 actual options to it.
Thank you very much. Folks, listen, we've done our part.
Your turn. It just comes down to this. We need to get this out into the community. We need to get the information out. It's obviously a little concern. We didn't offer food. We didn't offer any wine. And look at the turnout, okay? That speaks volumes. Please give us a hand because, well, I say give us a hand. Give the community a hand. This is important to all. We're gonna wrap it up.